Let's start by imagining. Not long after lunch, so you might be a little bit sleepy, so do this at your own, whether you think you can, but you can close your eyes for a moment if you want. Slow your breathing. I want to start with the abundance mindset that Angel was encouraging at the end of her remarks. And with a quote, "The first step towards creating an improved future is developing the ability to envision it." I heard this quote by Tony Dungy a couple years ago from Dr. Derek Griffith, an incredible researcher at Georgetown University, and it has resonated with me ever since he shared it. Sometimes we can limit our own imagination by focusing on what's feasible or what feels possible, but it is so valuable to spend time in that visioning space. So what if we let go of the constraints of the current systems, the current way that research is done, the current way that the world is, the challenges, and what if we spent time imagining the world we want, the world we're working to get to? What would we imagine? Oh, thanks, yeah, can you put that for? Could you do the slides while I'm?
I will.
Okay. I just asked him if he could advance them for me. I can only think about so many things at one time. Okay. So what is the world that we would imagine, that we could imagine? A world full of health justice. As the first panel said, thriving communities, not just surviving communities. Liberation, joy, love. If that's the world, what role would research have in getting to that world? How would we envision research and other ways of knowing? So I'm just inviting us to take that moment, you can open your eyes now, and keep that frame in our mind for this discussion. I want to dig a little bit deeper into the frame that was started by the opening remarks in the panel about community engagement and community engaged research. Our first panel raised how we must also interrogate the ways that community research itself can continue to deepen and perpetuate our inequities. Much of our current community engagement model adds community to the current research system and continues to hold power in research institutions, the power to decide. Should we engage communities? How should we engage? Who should we engage? How deeply should we engage? These decisions are typically being made by academic researchers. I appreciated the spectrum graphic that was shared because it included community-led. Research that moves from more transactional, academically driven engagement to community-led and community-driven research that fosters community leadership and prioritization and embraces, as Carla, thank you, said, a more transformational approach to research. So as we stay in our envisioning mindset today, we can discuss what that looks like. How do we operationalize a shift to community leadership in research? How do those of us in research institutions leverage the privilege we have, not just park it, but leverage it to actively shift power to not only center community leadership, but also to support community leadership? Next slide, please. Okay. So with our panel's focus on infrastructure, we can discuss what are the ways that the support of community leadership can be supported by infrastructure in communities, but also by research partnerships, by research institutions, and throughout the research enterprise. Every step of the way, what would be the way that we either reify current traditional approaches to research and research systems, or choose what would most support community leadership in research? We can ask that of every decision point. Next slide, please. So starting in community in terms of, looks like all the formatting got messed up, I'm just noticing, sorry for that. So community infrastructure for community research leadership. Often the folks that academic research may be partnering with will be individual community leaders or community organizations. They are leaders in their work, but because of the way that research is structured, they may not yet feel like leaders within the research enterprise. There are so many federal career development awards and programs to grow research capacity of researchers. Not a single one for community leaders. I've asked. So one of my community partners, Ann Jackson, said, "You should be pouring into me, ensuring that I, as an executive director of a community organization, and my organization has strong capacity, generally, not just related to research, because a strong civic infrastructure is as core to research as an institutional review board." Partners have shared that if we start with the community academic partnership, then there hasn't been space for community and patient leaders to develop their own capacity and community-driven research ideas. So giving space, giving funding, giving capacity, giving career development awards to community that allows them the space to think about and engage together without academics there. What is our research status quo? How do we make decisions? Is data and evidence a part of it? How do our communities even feel about research? As you know, the word sometimes sends shivers down people's mind. Like some of our partners said, we shouldn't use that term, we should talk about ways of knowing. You know, to come up with their own priorities and agenda and not just be reactive to approaches by academics. Develop their own infrastructure within their organizations or their broader communities, and thinking about how is research accountable to them? What is the impact that they're looking for? And I hyperlinked some resources that we've developed or compiled, and one of them includes something that Angel developed when she was at Access Living in Chicago. Next slide, please. So for those of us here that are at academic institutions or a part of academic teams or research, what is the infrastructure that we could have that would support community research leadership? Of course, our own infrastructure within the institution or for ourselves as researchers is important, but what would we develop that would specifically support community leadership? So one thing our partners constantly tell us is that researchers are very prepared to do research. They have not been prepared to partner. And so they've asked, and this is hyperlinked at the bottom, a resource that they developed on how researchers can prepare to partner. They ask that, yes, they can help you learn about their communities, but it's a sign of respect for them to learn, to do your own work, learning about communities, and also learning about yourself, self-reflecting on your positionality, your privileges, your biases, and reflecting on the profession that you're a part of, the institution that you're a part of. Another thing is developing your own partnership or power sharing skills and processes. Another thing that's not usually taught in universities. So what does shifting from more hierarchical supremacist forms of power to more liberatory forms of collective power look like in a meeting, in a research meeting? What does it look like in communication and decision-making processes and budgets? Every aspect, if we're taking a power sharing community-led approach, might look different. How do you know, like community accountability mechanisms, how would you know if the community-led work that you're doing is meeting what community partners, what community leaders would say is impactful to them? We could never answer that ourselves from the research space. It would only be impact as defined by community. So what are our mechanisms to be able to hear that and know that? And there's a lot of times, I think, where partners will be frustrated by things within the research process, and some researchers would say, oh, that's at the university level, that's out of my control. So always including advocacy as part of the way that you can seek change for things, leverage your privilege for things that are outside of your control. Next slide, please. And then going up to the research institution, because we know so many things are not decisions or structures that have been set up by individual researchers or research teams. It doesn't make sense for, we've already heard from so many amazing researchers on the first panel and since, but it doesn't make sense for each research team to try to develop something that is a bandage to something that's a problem that's been created at the institutional level. So how do research institutions develop that infrastructure and not have it be figured out by each team? Starting at the educational level again on things, so that we're not every time saying, oh, early career researchers, how can they now learn this? Why didn't they learn it during training? You know, and how can we change that? Again, we also need these mechanisms for community leadership and governance at the research level, at the institutional level. New places where that comes in, but also seats at existing places. That's one thing our steering committee tells us all the time. We're on a steering committee that was created new, specifically related to this. There's a lot of decision-making tables that already existed. We want more community leaders at those tables, not just new tables. So does the university, you know, we can talk about trustworthiness at the level of a researcher or a research team member, so important, but you're never going to be not associated with your university or just the word research in general. So what is the way that our institutions are also investing in showing up, tracking metrics related to this, understanding history. At the encouragement of one of our community partners, we're collaborating with a historian on our upper campus to try to understand the racial history of our med school and health system in Chicago, because that's something that's very important to community partners that our institution has not invested in. And then that infrastructure, typically when we have community partnerships as research, we're not the only one. Increasingly, that's a great thing, right? There's multiple people at our same institution. We could be working in the same communities with the same organizations and not know about it. What impact does that have on community when we're not coordinated? And we could have an opportunity to amplify the impact. I got the warning, I'm almost done. How is our institutions focusing on our anchor mission roles? The business practices of our institutions are not divorced from the kind of impact that we seek to have through research or through other parts of the university. I was meeting with a School of Public Health dean earlier this week who talked about advocating to their university to raise the minimum wage. They're the largest employer in the city where they are. Their city is not, by the state, is not allowed to raise the minimum wage. It's the federal minimum wage, but the university raised it to $15 an hour. That had a bigger public health impact in that city than probably all the research combined. Not to, you know, but so I just wanted to mention a couple things like that ARC has been developing related to this. So one is our community partner said we had two types of seed grants: partnership development focused on trustworthiness and relationship building, and then research pilots. They said you're starting too late. Again, that's putting us in a position we're not equitable with researchers, and certainly not in a position to be doing community-driven or community-led research. So now we have a seed grant type that only goes to community partners, and no researcher involved, no researcher, no academic, no one from Northwestern reviews it. It's only reviewed by community. And then another thing, we're in the design phase now, but in 2025, we're launching a community fellows program. Instead of hiring people to the university, we are going to invest in community leaders where they are. We're going to pour into them for the first half of the program to build their own research leadership capacity. And then the second half of the program, they are going to teach researchers about partnering, because they said if researchers aren't prepared to partner, the ones who should teach them how to do that is us, not other researchers, and then also with other community partners. And then this is my last bit, I swear. So at the research enterprise, you know, our funders, our disciplinary associations, you know, are they also thinking about the steps and the infrastructure they develop that supports community leadership? Do they have mechanisms to be driven by and accountable to communities? I put links to a couple of recent funding opportunities, one through the National Institute of Health, one through PCORI, that the money goes to community. And they can engage academics, but it goes to them. So the type, and even I just wanted to call out and celebrate the type of investment a foundation like AOTF is making. I love that this summit is going to happen regularly, and I encourage you, you know, as you think about planning for the next year, each decision you make, what would be the most accessible, the most supportive of community leadership? Would it be in a hotel? Would it be in a community setting? Would it have poetry open the session? Would it have different ways of sharing that communities already do? They might have to learn how to make a poster. So, you know, every place we could do. So then the last is just to end where we started, which is let's focus on the envisioning. If we disconnect ourselves from the ways that the research enterprise is now, what are the ways that we will envision that health justice will grow when community leadership is transforming it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Elizabeth De La Rosa, and I'm co-presenting today with Ms. Ludivina Hernandez. And we hail from the great state of Texas, specifically from San Antonio. And so I just want to say thank you for inviting us today. I'm very humbled. I feel very honored that I was invited to speak here today with Ludivina. Okay. Oh. Okay. So a lot of the work that's made possible or that supports community engaged research is made possible through the alignment of programs and initiatives and a lot of leveraging of resources. whereby our community and stakeholder engagement partners and our organizational structure supports this work. So in my role, I work for the Institute for Integration of Medicine and Science, and it's made possible by an infrastructure grant called a Clinical Translational Science Award, and I think several or many of y'all might know about those here in the audience. And then Ludivina works with the South Central Area Health Education Center. And so together we do a lot of the community-facing work, whereby we work with our community partners to identify community priorities and then to eventually like narrow the scope of projects and so forth. We have several programs and initiatives that we work on together, and through those initiatives we try to like align our efforts again to address the needs of our community partners. And then also in the graphic we also have included some of our larger institutional partners, which include local universities and colleges, our local hospital health system, and then just like the larger CTSA network. It's also important to mention that in our community-facing work, we do serve a 38 county service area. So if you imagine Texas, San Antonio is located, it would be like the belly button of Texas, and so 38 counties goes all the way down to the tip of Texas to Brownsville, which is about 5 hours away. It goes to like the border areas, can range from 2 to 3 hours over into Corpus Christi, also located in the Gulf of Mexico area. And so some of the special populations that we work with include folks who live in rural areas, as well a lot of Hispanic communities, many who are monolingual Spanish speakers, and then just like recently, lots of recent refugee communities, and Ludi is going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. And I think it goes without saying that there is a value in community engagement, because it does help to increase the reach, the effectiveness, the uptake, the implementation, and the sustainment of health research. And it enhances research because it helps to increase the knowledge and the awareness of the topics that are selected. It allows for the development of more effective solutions to address the health concerns which are identified by our community partners. And then also, it's empowering for our communities to make decisions and to implement change.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm honored to be here. I am part of the grassroots community engagement efforts from UT Health system to bring community members to collaborate with research. So I'm going to talk about community-based participatory research, which is kind of the community engaged research, which falls more into to the right, thinking about what the presentation this morning about where there's little community participation to more involvement. So our community-based participatory research principles tell us that we should recognize the community as a unit of identity. The CBPR principles also tells us that we should be building in the strengths and resources of the communities, but not only the communities, but also of the academic partners. And we should collaborate and form partnerships that are equitable. So the CBPR principles tells us that co-learning opportunities we need to engage with and find ways to build capacity on both sides. So there should be mutual benefits for all parties involved. The CBPR principles tell us that we should focus on what matters in the community. So it is a cyclical and repetitive process. It's not about just coming in and doing a research project, but continuing that relationship and making sure that that we keep that relationship going, and that we also bring about the findings and to find opportunities to address what is what else is happening within the communities. So again, the CBPR principles tells us that we should disseminate findings back to the communities and not for it not to be kept, in the university, and involve all the partners in the dissemination process. So to commit to the sustainability of the process, but also the partnerships. And we need to commit to not coming in and just taking data from the community, but to be in it for the long haul. So this is a new CBPR principle, number 10, that was recently added, and this is to address the race and class while embracing cultural humility. I'm gonna get it back to.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot going on in this slide, but I'll try my best to describe it. So down on the bottom, we have 3 orange blocks, and so a lot of the community engaged research that we partner on with our community partners takes place within these groups. The first is our Community Health Advisory Board. I don't think that's unique to us. I think lots of universities have those in different ways to help guide and advance the research that's going on to, within their universities, and making sure that it's responsive to the community's needs. What we do have that might be unique to our university is that we have practice-based research networks. These are called PBRNs for short. And so our department serves as an operational base for these PBRNs, and these are groups of practices that work together to improve the quality of care and community-based healthcare questions that are relevant to practitioners within their own communities. And so we have 7 practice-based research networks. We have some that are focused on oral health, some that do psychiatry. We have one group that works with older people, and a couple that are working on primary care issues. We don't have any on occupational therapy, so that's just an idea. Okay, so moving on, translational advisory boards. We call these tabs for short, and the translational advisory boards are geographically county-based advisory boards. We have 7, which we collaborate a lot in partnership with the South Central Area Health Education Center. And so these tabs are responsive for like a lot of the community engaged research that we work on. And so if we move towards the top of the slide, you guys can see some of the different programs and initiatives that we have going on within our institution, including a community engagement small project grants program, whereby we provide funding to community academic partnerships who are working to address a community health concern. So together they can work on developing an assessment or research project. They can do projects that are focused on education and training, or disseminating findings. We also have a Community Engagement Hero Awards, which was a program which was brought to us. It was something that was brought to us by a community member actually years ago. In this program, we highlight and we honor the work that people that are working within a community academic partnership are doing. So we recognize students, researchers, community partners, and then we also highlight the work of like an outstanding community health improvement project. We also have a public health camp, which is an annual program that we put on with the South Central Area Health Education Center, as well as other community partners from our area. It's open to 11th and 12th graders who are interested in learning more about public health careers and biomedical careers. What's nice about the program is that we invite trainees and scholars, and we also invite community members to come in and to give information about like the work that they do. And they talk about their experiences there. During the week, the students work on a capstone project, And those capstone projects are based on community health priorities that have been previously identified through the work that the TABs and the PBRNs do. And so the students work in small groups, they develop a little research poster, and then that in turn is presented at our Community Engagement Symposium, which we hold every December. And this is another event which is planned in collaboration with our TABs, some of our PBRN members, faculty, students. We have lots of representation on our planning committee. And so this is a nice event. It's a safe space. We hold it out in always off campus. During the pandemic, obviously, it was online. And last year, we held it for the first time at a local community center, which is where Ludi works, actually. And it's a great opportunity for people to learn about other projects that community academic partnerships are working on together. We do require that all of the people that present at that event, that they co-present with the community partner. We include a research poster fair, and people have to include their community partners on their research posters. We even revamped the research poster fair so that the template that is used by the presenters is more accessible and easier to understand without all the extra jargon and technical language. Okay, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the TABs because I feel like this is like where there's like a lot of alignment between the work that I do and what Ludi does. And so again, like I mentioned, the TABs are county-based representative bodies that work together to improve community health through the facilitation of community-engaged research and then also education and training. And so I mentioned before that we have 7. And so some of the activities that they work on together include, again, identifying priorities. They partner with researchers to develop and refine research protocols, making them more culturally tailored to the community. They go through training to learn about data collection and analysis. They force the investigators to think about how else they can disseminate findings going beyond a regular journal. They also work together to seek sustainable resources for community health research initiatives and programs, and then they also help to facilitate community health research partnerships. These tabs are open, they're composed of different community sectors, which include health, education, nonprofits. They're scattered throughout the South Texas area in those 38 counties that I mentioned. So there's like rural representation in there as well. And trainees and faculty they're always welcome to attend these meetings as long as they come with an open mindset. And we do encourage them to also help support local events that matter to the community. You know, there may be like a health fair going on, or a diaper drive, things like that, because those things matter. And as people mentioned earlier today, it's important to show up and to be there and to show your face. And so these are some of the events that we try to encourage folks to participate in. Okay, there you go.
Again, I work for the South Central Area Health and Education Center, and it's a non-profit 501c3 organization dedicated to workforce development and community engagement, and it's within a 12-county region in South Texas, South Central Texas. So we focus on opportunities that engages students with community and it fosters bi-directional learning. So we aim to improve the health of communities by cultivating a diverse workforce and engaging communities to become vital partners in research. As you can see in this snapshot, we provide various opportunities for students, health professionals and community to participate. The Scholars Program is a health profession students that focuses on interprofessional education while exposing them to rural and underrepresented communities. So speaking about health professionals, These are second-year family medicine residents from UT Health who complete a 1-month long community rotation with us, and during that time they bring educational presentations chosen by our community members on topics that are of concern to them. We have seen gradual changes in attendees' attitudes, knowledge, and change that only happens, and these changes only happen over time. And that includes feeling empowered to ask questions and to ask for further explanation on material that's presented to them and that they do not understand. So we provide evidence-based information so that they can make informed medical decisions. And moving on to community, so we aim to improve the health of communities by cultivating diverse health care workforce and engaging communities to become vital partners in research. We strive to address community priorities and changes and challenges with knowing that we do better when we know better and that we don't know what we don't know. So we do community assessments to find out the community needs and assets. Also to provide bi-directional learning experiences for community members, for students, and also for the investigators. As a community health worker instructor, one of our biggest initiatives has been training and assisting individuals to obtain the Texas Community Health Worker certification, especially in the rural communities. So these classes provide connection for those community health workers to collaborate in different projects, and because they also help us, in doing research. So we take a holistic approach, body, mind, and spirit, and this is to enhance inclusion of all cultures. Incorporating faith organizations has made a big difference, to engage community, to have a community engagement. So AHEC supports community events, especially health fairs and initiatives to stay connected and to also build the trust. Our outreach has now grown to new immigrants from Afghanistan and Asian communities, and we have, including our Hispanic communities along the border in rural communities. So talking about research, we work to build authentic partnerships when working to balance investigators' objectives and also the community needs. We work on being transparent about project cycles and funding. We hold weekly team meetings for updates and project planning. It also promotes the cohesiveness of our members. So we bring in community health workers who are leaders in the community and community members to start working on projects, on upcoming projects, and that's to develop projects and implementation and dissemination. A lot of this work is being done through the tabs that Elizabeth spoke about earlier. Things to keep in mind when holding community meetings is that meeting sites, meeting where the community is, whether it be in community centers or in churches or wherever they are. Helping with childcare during the meetings to encourage people to participate. Transportation, maybe even we have even provided bus passes for some people to come into the meetings. Interpretation services, online meetings to reach out to urban and rural communities and include a one-on-one Zoom support. So we provide lunch and stipends and incentives whenever possible. As far as resources, we partner with different organizations, but we have also compiled a list of resources that we can share with the people that we serve in our area. Another resource is our satellite office. So if you can afford an office in the community or partner with another organization to be in the community, that will give you opportunities to share resources and bring in a collaborative effort with people. So these resources are for students, health professionals, researchers, and also the community or anybody that is working out in the community.
Well, I had a couple of more slides, but we can just talk about it during the discussion. It's fine.
Okay. All right, so
He has your slide up.
Is that it? Oh, okay, cool. I got a mic already, okay. Okay, hi everybody, it's me again. So I have some thoughts, but I'm just gonna give you some more informal conversations first about my experience as a Black disabled woman researcher who's a part of the community, multiple communities, but also does research. And so I'm like an insider, outsider. And so Semi Lenton, who's a disability studies scholar, had a quote, and I'm like paraphrasing it, but it's something like, it's really rare to find like someone who has the skills of research that's also a member of the disability community. And so my life's work is to try to make that less and less of a rare reality. I do not want to be an anomaly. I'm not going to be satisfied until like people like me on the stage is just an everyday thing, and it's just like, oh, like there's a Black disabled woman doctor, and that's Tuesday, like, and then I can start, focusing on other things that are more interesting to me, like because when I've like biased folks will call people who are members of marginalized communities, who study marginalized communities, they will question us and say, that's doing me search, as if like the research enterprise hasn't been doing me search this whole time, like as if like white men haven't been navel gazing at themselves throughout the whole history of research itself. Like, so like the idea that like suddenly like disabled people wanting to study themselves or people of color or women wanting to study themselves is some strange thing that no other human being in history has ever done is just beyond me. So yes, of course I want to know more about people like me, but the issue is just that understanding people like me in relationship to other people too. So when you are talking about minority groups, you're also talking about dominant groups too. It's not like, so when people say like, well, why are you only talking about people of color? But when we're talking about people of color, we're also talking about you. And if you don't see yourself in that, then the problem is you, not us. So anyway, I got into this work in part because so I grew up going to disabled schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. I went to disabled camps too, so I was literally institutionalized like in a structure where like around disabled people, like the hospitals, the schools, they were under my camps. I was organized to just be around disabled people, and these were public schools too. And then suddenly I went to college and everybody disappeared. And I was at Penn State. And so I went to a disabled school from kindergarten to 12th grade. My school still exists, by the way. And I was there for no other reason than the fact that I was in a wheelchair. And then, but then these same people said, but you can go to Penn State. And it's like, okay, well, if I could go to Penn State, then like, why did you feel like you need to be at a special education school for 12 years? And that speaks to the fact that that special education in a large degree is organized in a way that makes it more convenient for non-disabled people to educate us. It's easier to put us in a contained space so that non-disabled people can teach us than to actually integrate us into society. And so in any event, I went to Penn State, 40,000 people. So I went from a school that was from kindergarten to 12th grade, where I had the same teacher in 4th grade and then the same teacher in 9th grade. It was like a small school, small town. Everybody knew each other, and then the same kids. to like, and it was majority black and brown, to like Penn State, where there were 400 kids in my high school and in my elementary school, and there were 40,000 people at Penn State. And I was like the only wheelchair user for the most part wherever I went. And very few black people. So it was like a multiple cultural shock. And I went from a school that was made for me to the point where there was a brace shop. Like if my braces broke or my crutches broke, I could just go down the hall and get my crutches fixed, my wheelchair fixed, everything. There were wheelchair swings. I used to call my school Disabled Disneyland. Everything was just, buses picked me up and everything. And then to Penn State, where all of a sudden, like, I had to go to this thing called Disability Support Services, get a letter and give it to a teacher and say, hey, I have a disability and you need to accommodate me. This is very shocking. And nobody showed me how to do it. And I was 17, by the way. I wasn't even 18 yet. So it was very hard, and they were adults. And so when a teacher would tell me, I'm not going to accommodate you, I just said, okay. Because I was a kid, and I was taught to respect my elders. And if adults said, well, me giving you extra time on this test is going to inconvenience me, then, which is what they often tell disabled people, then I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to just go without, which is what I would do. And then also the intersecting issue of being black and disabled is that it's very complicated, because I was also in a position when you're a disabled person, and you're asking someone for accommodations, you're redistributing power, in a way, and that's one thing to do if you're disabled. It's a whole other thing if you're a black person and you're telling a white person that you have to accommodate me. Like, as a black person, I have to tell white people that you have to accommodate me, and it's the law. Well, beyond me being disabled or not, white people didn't want to hear that from me. And it's definitely not in Center County, Pennsylvania. So I went through a lot of racism and ableism there, and somehow skipped to the end. I got through it, and I got a PhD. Ta-da. So, but then I went to Maryland. So anyway, make a long story short, I started working at Access Living, which is a Center for Independent Living in Chicago, and you should know I have ADHD, so this is why I'm going in circles. I remember now. So the reason why I wanted to bring up my education is because I experienced my education before college as a community, and that I didn't know where school started and home began, right? Like, it was a community. And that's the way I think that research should be. And so like, it's very rare to find someone like me as a researcher, because I have a very unique story. And one of it is because of the way that I was raised. One, my grandmother just happened to be a principal of a school for kids with special needs, or, well, kids with disabilities, I don't like special needs, but back then that's what they called it. So my grandma just happened to be a principal at a school for kids with disabilities. My mother went to school across the street from the school that she was a principal of, and so she grew up around disabled kids. And then when my mom was in her 20s, she just happened to have me. And so I was born in a family that already understood disability and was already pretty accepting of it. So, and then because my grandmother was an educator, and my mother also worked at my school as a teacher's assistant, and my grandpa was retired and an educator, and so he used to just show up, and he didn't have anything better to do, so he would just show up in the middle of the day and sit in the back of the classroom and observe my class. And so I always had to be on my best behavior, because I never knew when my grandpa might just show up and just sit in the back of class. And when I would come home and my grandpa would say, well, what's your homework? And I said, oh, Grandpa, I don't have homework today. And that was like the worst thing to say. And then he said, you have homework every day. And then my grandpa would make an assignment for me. And whatever assignment he made was far worse than anything that my teachers could have given me. And so I would go to school and I would beg the teachers to please give me assignments, because if you don't give me an assignment, then my grandpa's going to give me an assignment, or he's going to take me on a trip to a museum or something like that. So please give me homework. You know, my grandmother, you know, taught some of the teachers had taught at my school because she was a professor, so she taught some of the teachers. She taught them special education. Some of them were her sorority sisters, so I could never get away with anything. By you know, I make out in school, find them in my family, find out about that. It was terrible. So, but simultaneously, I had my mother, who was wonderful, but she had a problem. She had a drug addiction. And okay, I'm wrapping this up. And I had a teacher who drove me to college at Penn State because my mom, you know, because she knew that I didn't have a way to get to Penn State. We didn't have a car, and so she drove. She took time out of her weekend, and she drove me to college. And my mother was, at the time, she was not sober, and she still let my mom get in the car, and she let my mom sober up, and we got to Penn State, and I got to see Penn State, and then I decided to go. And then I also had a counselor who was white and disabled at my school, and so I'm saying all this to say that, like, I'm a product of an environment where there was no, like, the line between education and home was very blurred, where people went far and beyond their job description to help me. And that is the only reason why I'm here today. It's not because people follow the rules and all the policies and all the stuff, because technically my teacher I should not have been in my teacher's car, was not supposed to be there, it's not because my school judged my mother because she was an addict. My teacher actually really loved my mom. She just thought she had a problem. They never made me feel bad that she was an addict. And now she's fine. She's also sober. And I guess what I'm saying is that that's how I envision research needs to be, is that at some point we need to be beyond just community engaged research, but like research needs to be a reflection of the community. And so you know, when we have participants from the community, they need to have access to the libraries. They need to have access to the computers. They need to be getting subsidized access to the classrooms. Like they need, you know what I mean? Like they need to be having reduced costs to medical care. So it's like, why should the community participate in your research? What's really in it for them? They're over-researched and they're exhausted anyway. And a lot of problems haven't been solved, not because there are not enough studies about it. Like how many more studies do we need about like housing segregation? Like, you know, like just how many more studies do we need about like disability unemployment? And disability unemployment has not improved to the degree that we have studied it. So like, and I'm not saying that research isn't important, right? But research is not enough. So anyway, I could have done this whole, because like I have a PhD and I could have did a whole bunch of data and like given you like some slides and stuff, which I have. But then I thought, no, I'll just tell you the real and I'll just tell you the truth and I'll offer you me. And it's your job to work really hard to make sure that there are more people like me, and not like me, but like with my identities or other marginalized identities, so that I can go on and I can just like watch TV and do something else more interesting than talking about oppression all the time, because I have other interests. But as long as oppression exists, this is what I'm going to have to talk about, you guys. So I don't know, fix it. That's it. That's my answer.
Okay. Says it's on. Now it's on. Okay. So thank you very much for the presentations. I wanted to ask a couple questions to the panel, and this is where they get a little nervous because they produced a list of questions and no one ever really picked which ones they want. So there's a whole bunch of things in here. And then on top of it, I'm very aware that my San Antonio colleagues didn't present a couple slides. So I'm going to ask a question that I think will bridge that a little bit. And I think it draws some on the different presentations that you all have made, as well as things that others have made prior. And I think from an approach and a strategy standpoint, for those that are starting out and struggling with the idea of engaging with the community, what would you guys suggest would be a good starting point when you think about the process of community engaged research? So that's part one. Part two would be, how best do you guys think, what best strategies are there for generating authentic community engagement? And then the third part would be, how would you approach sustaining your projects? So several of the things you guys talk about, how you do it over time. So, and I'll just let you guys pick how you want to approach it, but you don't have to dash all three, but love to hear strategies for beginning, making authentic partnerships and sustaining efforts.
I can start, say something. I mean, I think especially as, you know, when folks are students or early career and you're thinking about where to be, it's not, you know, it's not the same across all educational institutions or all research institutions in terms of how supportive they are of this, how much infrastructure they have, you know, what pressures you may have, not just to your research part, but to the, because you can't start with the research, right? You have to start with the community and the relationships, and so many of our structures don't provide dedicated time, support, mentoring, capacity, infrastructure for that. So, you know, really thinking about where, if you have the privilege of choice to look for where you want to be and where you want to do this work, you know, looking at that too, not just the, you know, is it an R1 or whatever. And, you know, really also I think because, you know, this approach to research is newer than research itself, there are many that have been around in institutions for a long time whom were likely have not been practitioners of, you know, community-driven approaches. So not just thinking about your, you know, mentors within the institution, but your communities of practice, your peers that you could be a part of, and what is a structure, an infrastructure or a capacity that would allow you to, you know, be mentored by community leaders too.
I would say that one of the things that I feel that has worked for South Central AHAC is that we work with interns that come in from the universities that are going into these health professions. We work with the residents that come in from the university hospital, and we bring them all into these trainings, and the community gets the experience. A lot of times I get comments from community members that say, wow, this is the most I've ever talked to a physician, you know, and I don't even talk to my physician as much as because they're able after the presentations, you know, to stay and communicate and ask whatever questions they need. So there's information, and we have the students, and we also have community health worker students that are doing internships with us. So it's all these groups that are coming together and learning about each other, because, you know, just that saying that we say that that we do better when we know better. A lot of times we ask the community members, you know, like, what do you want, or they don't know what they want. They don't know what they need, because they don't know what opportunities are out there. So whenever, you know, there's people that come in and put in these presentations, then they put, you know, 2 and 2 together, and I say, oh, well, you know, maybe this is something that I need to look into. Maybe that's some. So there's a lot of learning. We have a lot of people that are coming in and returning to all these presentations because they like learning about how to take care of themselves. We just had a presentation, you know, this past week. we're doing them monthly, but now it seems like we're doing two or sometimes even 3 times a month, different presentations, and presentations even, for community members on how to connect to Zoom, because a lot of researchers or think that everybody has a cell phone. That doesn't mean that they know how to use everything in their cell phone, especially in the community that I serve. They don't know how to use all those features. So, yes, they have that information right there, but they can't get to it. Thank you.
I think that's a really good point. Like the digital divide, we really need to address within the research enterprise, because a lot of times the methods that we use in research are the ones that are most convenient for institutions and not the ones that are most accommodating for the communities that we serve, or reflect what they can actually do and have access to. And so really challenging some of our methodologies, research methodologies are important, and making sure that they are accessible, and taking responsibility and ownership of making sure that the whole research project is accessible, not only to people with disabilities, but people in rural areas, people that you don't just study people, but could the people that you study be members of your team in a really meaningful way? Not just as a community advisory board, right? Which is sometimes used in a really tokenistic way, but in a really meaningful way. And then ensuring that, the study results are going to be shared in accessible formats, beyond just, in peer-reviewed journals or something like that, which you will be awarded for and paid for, but the community itself won't benefit from. And making sure that you include plain language, and that you include information about your research in various other languages as well. And like someone else said, making sure that you present your research with members of the community, but also co-author with members of the community as well. Would be, just in every way that you can, share power with community members, because so much that researchers do, doesn't require a PhD to do it. It's not that deep. It really isn't. So you can train your community members to transcribe and to do all sorts of other research skills. So we're just so self-important with all our fancy letters, and it's really not that serious. Shame on us for spending all this money on doing stuff that we could have just learned if we just had free public libraries. But in any event, definitely share your knowledge and your resources in ways where the community can ultimately benefit, and think about what your measures of success are. Because right now, the measures of success that are rewarded in research are not the same measures of success that communities need to thrive, and unfortunately, the measure of success in research is not eliminating health disparities, or that's not the measure of success usually. But that's what communities want. So how can you make sure that your studies actually reflect the measures of success that communities value?
All right. Maybe? No? How about now? There we go. Okay, so this is actually the time when you guys get to ask questions. I have a list if you don't want to ask questions, but I think it'd be very good to hear questions from you all for the panel, because we have 4 differing opinions, most likely, and it would be beneficial. So please raise your hand, and
Our microphone person stepped out of the room.
Well, I can walk. I know that's debatable, but I can do it. Okay. That's okay.
Okay. Kalia Johnson, again from Chapel Hill. Really appreciate all of the strategies you all talked about, but there's something that really stuck out to me that you mentioned, Ms. Hernandez, about having Afghan immigrants now in your community, and it really took my mind to intersectionality, but also sort of cross-cultural relations as it pertains to how we engage members from different cultural groups in community research. And so could you just talk to us a little bit more about how you're bringing both communities together, both Hispanic co-researchers, but also those who are new to Texas from Afghanistan?
Yes, so we bring in, we're working with a center that's where the refugees are, a lot of the refugees are going to get services, and that's where we started collaborating with them. This last class that I had for community health workers, I actually had 2 doctors from Afghanistan, one from Afghanistan, one from Pakistan, yes. So they were doctors, but they had just arrived. So they were wanting to get back into the medical field, and they're taking their steps. But in the meantime, they're wanting to get this certification, and they want to work with their own community, because it's a big group that they're working with. Because, for example, they're talking that the people are not doing their community. They're not doing. They don't know how to connect with getting health care. So they end up, anything that's going wrong, they end up in the emergency room. So that, that's all that they know, that's all that they understand. So they're trying to work with them to learn about doing preventive health care, and in so many other areas, how to get the insurance, that can help them. So that's how where we connect, where we provide resources and information, and getting connected to, because we work with a lot of organizations, and we collaborate with so many people that can assist them. So that's the connection that we have, and them getting their own community trained. And we're translating the information into Pashto and all the different languages that may be needed.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a second to share a resource in terms of equity and balancing things out. My colleagues and I created an alternative to the city training for people with intellectual and other developmental disabilities, and City's about to adopt it. And it's at the website, lowercase re, and the number 4, and then the word all.org, re4all.org. And that just stands for Research Ethics for All. And it was created by a community advisory board. So it's already been vetted through our group. And we use PowerPoint slides with a superimposed human being. So for people who are unable to read or have literacy issues, they still have an oral version. All you have to do is register at the site to use it. It's free. They're just tracking their success. So I just wanted to offer that up to anybody who may be looking for a resource and don't want to create a new one.
Again, Ron Booz, UIC, and it's a comment, but the summation of the question is going to be, do you have this in place? I recognize, and I'm really paying attention and taking in this word of engagement into your research, community engagement. And I guess when I hear that word and see it in print, I believe what is needed are boots on the ground, that aspect. I guess when someone, a layperson as myself, would sit back and hear the word a researcher, the first vision that comes to mind, and I know I'm wrong, is that there's someone sitting at a desk collecting information, analyzing the information, and then coming to some conclusion that they're going to present to the community. Boots on the ground aspect of that, I guess, is, I'm looking at, do you have that in place? That would be the question. Do you have that team? Do you have that resource in your own entities to really have an impact in terms of doing the research?
I think I can speak to that. So Ludivina has talked a little bit about how she conducts some training for community health workers. So we provide internship opportunities for these CHW students from local community colleges, but we also provide, we have different programs that have different advisory boards, and so we have encouraged the inclusion of those CHWs within those advisory boards, and then also within those roles, they help to help guide and develop those projects along. And so, like, I feel like by including those CHWs who are, we refer to them as boots on the ground people because they're out there in the community, they know what's going on. They're from outside of the institution, and so that's just like one small example of like how we are including different perspectives.
Working with the South Central AHAC and UT Health, what I had wanted to do was be out in the community and have an office in the community where the people go. There's, with the community that I work with, they don't venture out, pretty far. They kind of stay within their same community. So if things are happening, these are community members that would never go for a presentation at the university. So when we were able to, when my organization was able to, that I work with, was able to provide this satellite office that I had been wanting to have in the community, that's what's bringing people in, because they feel comfortable going to that community center. Besides my office, I work this where I work is, it used to be an elementary school that Family Services organization took over, and so it's a wraparound services. There's a lot of other organizations that are there, and so when people go there, they don't just get one service, but they get all this wraparound, information and services that they don't have to be going through to a lot of places. I have, because the accessibility, like I have this one lady that wants to come to my to the presentations that we have in our office, but she has to take 2 buses. During with our weather, there was 100 degrees, plus. She's an older person, and sometimes I didn't even want to invite her because I was concerned about about her health, having to travel that much. But that's how much community they want to learn, they want to be involved. It's just that it's just so hard, with everything that they have to, all the barriers that they have, everything that they have to go through. That if the opportunity presents itself, and once they start learning, they wanna participate again, and they wanna be involved. But we just need to make it easier for them to do so.
Thanks. I really appreciate that question, because I think, like, when we think about infrastructure, like there's so many things that could be a part of that boots on the ground. Like, it might be people and connections, community space, but so many of the pieces are things that research teams that have a wet lab or a dry lab, like, these are different things that are necessary for boots on the ground community research, and that consistently the university is not used to that. Like, why do we have to have cash or cash cards? Why is it after so long, it is so hard to pay people? But you may also need, you need more food. You need more swag. Like, people don't understand why you need swag. You might need a radio show. You might need social media skills or podcasts, like not the things that are like if we were to not think about how do we make research more accessible, but we were to think about how do communities share information with each other and then build the things that we're going to need so that not only we can conduct research, but most importantly, we can have impact. Our university has no support for developing infographics, data visualization, developing policy papers. They're constantly giving trainings about speaking to the media, but it's always the national mainstream media. It's never community media. So just thinking what's different about what we would need to do this work, and why are our institutions or our funders so not aligned with funding that and supporting that, or having even people knowledgeable about what those things are.
In institutions that make it hard for communities to participate, rather than asking communities to keep bending and conforming to the systems that already exist. And so, it's our role as people who care about communities and want to do this work to look at our institutions and say, okay, in what ways are our funding mechanisms, in what ways, our boards of trustees and our classes, our curriculums not reflecting the needs of our community, and then transforming that so that there can be more boots on the ground. And I was a part of the Access Living, which was the Center for Independent Living that created these research principles for engaging research with people with disabilities. And we as a center were the boots on the ground that other universities and researchers partnered with to access other members of the disabled community. But I do want to say that it's important to define different members of the community, because a nonprofit is a specific type of community, right? But it's still not the community. And I feel a lot of times researchers use nonprofits as a compensation for actual people who actually live in communities. And you got to understand that a lot of nonprofits have their own agendas that sometimes exploit the very communities that they're supposed to serve. And a lot of people who even work at nonprofits are not members of the community. And so I used to say that all the time while working at Access Living in Chicago, that I'm not from Chicago. That we had a whole advocacy community, and we were all disabled people, but none of us were from Chicago. None of us, and that was a problem. And so, when you equate the nonprofit organization as a community, and so I just find it very interesting how I feel universities and other research institutions do this thing where they kind of try to make all these compensations for actually doing a nitty-gritty root and just go to the hood, it's right there, go. It just really makes me mad sometimes. As someone who's from the hood, and when I did my research as a disabled black woman, right, I did research, I had to study black women with disabilities, and when I was an intern, I would hear researchers that say, oh, well, black people with disabilities are hard to reach population, da-da-da-da-da, we can't collect them, da-da-da-da. Somehow I and my disabled self on Social Security managed to recruit 30 disabled people in a wheelchair, on paratransit, because I knew where they were. And I didn't have a problem going to the hospital and just sitting out of the hospital and just asking disabled people, hey, I'm doing a study. And there's we have to really stop making excuses about, these things and actually go to the communities that we study. And it's not enough to just have, proxies, but and I'm not saying community organizations are not very important, but they are not the same as actually going to a church, actually going to the public housing and sitting out there and knocking on people's door, which is what I did.
Come.
Getting tired, going slower.
This is just very quick. Could you advance to your QR code? You said we could look at your slides? Thank you so much.
I just wanted to mention, about 12 years ago, when I first started working for UT Health for a doctor that was doing a project on hepatitis C, my job was to, we were working with inpatients at the university hospital they were being tested for hepatitis C, and they had to opt out of the testing, but so we had a lot of people that ended up, being tested. So with this project, we would bring them in, and they would get tested, they would get followed up, they would be connected to hepatologists. We would work for them to get the medication, and with the new medications with hepatitis C, they were getting cured. But when I first started with the program, my doctor had said that I was working with had said, we'll call people 3 times, and if they don't respond, then move on to the next person. And so I said, okay, I had a script that I needed to say that was provided for me. And when I was seeing this, I said, okay, this is not really gonna work. But so I started trying to do that, and then right away I said, this is not gonna work. So I did my own thing. I did my promotora, community health worker thing that I know works. So then I knew that when people were in the university hospital, they didn't go there because of hepatitis C. They went there because they had other issues. So so I knew that they had to solve those issues, before they could even think about hepatitis C, because hepatitis C is not hurting, they're not bleeding, so that's something that's going to be in the back of their minds. So what I would do is I would because I knew that a lot of people that end up in the university hospital, if you miss 3 weeks of work, that's already going to be your rent. When you get out, you're not going to be able to pay your rent, you're not going to have food, you're worried about other things. So then I would start telling them, what other services do you need? You had this test positive, but I know that right now may not be the right time, but I can call you in 2 weeks, or I can call you in 3 weeks and see what how you're doing. But in the meantime, what else can I help you with? And then I was doing this about calling the food bank, because I know of all these resources. So I would call the food bank, I would call about things to pay the bills, their light bill, or assistance with rent, and all these things. And then I was getting concerned, because I said, I'm doing stuff that I wasn't hired to do. I was doing all these other case management things. So the numbers started, first we didn't have people participating, and then it started building up. So the doctor asked me, what is it that you're doing that's working? I said, well, I'm gonna confess, this is what I'm doing. I'm not using your script. I'm not doing it. I said, this is what I'm doing. So then the numbers went up, and calling people and staying. When I would call them, and they'd say, well, my daughter, I'm not gonna be able to do anything because my daughter's pregnant and she's due this. So I would make a note, so next time I would call her, so how's your daughter? How's she doing? Does she have the baby? And then we'll get on to moving into other things and getting them engaged. And you have to be present. You have to, they have to know that you really care. And then you have a relationship, and then you have a connection, and you move on, and that's how it works.
And what's our university metric for that in the tenure system, right? Why is that not because there's so many things that are being set up there, and you could imagine that a researcher would be like, how am I going to do that and all the other things that I'm supposed to do? That's how crazy this is, that we have a system that's set up to more care about those metrics instead of caring. So that's why we have to totally transform instead of tweak.
And that's part of the reason why when we started planning this conference, we wanted to have this panel on infrastructure building. And because we're talking about capacity, researchers are people too, and also have limited capacity, limited time, limited resources. So as you all were saying, no one person, no early career scientist, no senior researcher can do this work authentically with boots on the ground and be present in all these kinds of ways alone and in isolation. So we knew that there were great examples out there, like Jen's work at Northwestern, like the work that y'all are doing in Texas, that are building this larger infrastructure beyond an individual research lab, or even beyond an individual OT department, to think of, okay, what could this infrastructure look like, and how can we learn from people who are doing it well from the academic side, but also from the community side. And I think Angel's work and Ludvinia's work are both speaking to that also, of like, what are they doing community-wise to vet us as researchers to say, are you the real deal? Are you committed? Are you authentic? Are you interested in collaborating in meaningful and sustained ways? And I filled out that Access Living form. It is no joke. And you really need to sort of prove why you're there and why you're wanting to engage. So I think we can learn something from this broader infrastructure as we're trying to have these conversations about how to move community-engaged research with OTs and communities forward.